Hey everyone, and welcome to On the Clutch, where we talk about car stuff. Today, we're going to be counting down the top 10 ugliest cars of all time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, there have been a lot of ugly cars in the history of cars, and there's way more than 10 really ugly cars, but we're going to be focusing on the 10 ugliest cars, and not just normal, boring, ugly-ass old Civics or, Yugo hatchbacks or anything Russian. Those are all just boring, kind of ugly, dull cars. We're going to be talking about really ugly cars. Today, we're talking about the ugliest of all cars. So let's get into it. Number 10 on our list is probably a car you've never even heard of. It's called the Tata Magic Iris. And, well, now you're going to remember it because it is insanely ugly. It sort of looks like a square escape pod from Star Wars or something, stuck on a couple of piano casters for wheels. Those wheels are tiny, and with how tall and short that car is, it just doesn't work at all. The front is as flat as a wall, and it looks like an unhappy character from Adventure Time or something like that. And it's got a bland mouth that's just like, yeah, I know I'm ugly. Yeah, I'm ashamed of myself as well. It's just sad. It doesn't want to exist. It's just horribly proportioned and disgusting looking. And not only that, but it's got a really retarded name. It sounds like a celebrity baby name. Magic Iris. I bet Kim and Kanye will use that one next. Number 9 from France is the Citroën Visa. Now, this thing is just weird looking. Now, at first it kind of just looks like a boring, ugly 1960s or 70s European car. But it's a little bit worse than that. Now, first of all, the front has this terribly ugly plastic bumper thing on it, which really looks out of place when the rest of the car is just completely made of metal, like most 1960s and 70s cars. It's just on there for no reason whatsoever, and it kind of looks like a really ugly mustache with a really bored expression, with oversized headlights that look like glasses or something like that. Now that's bad enough, but where it really gets bad is the back. It slightly curves up in the back where the back wheels are, and then it also gets smaller, like it's shrinking in the back. Like that episode of The Simpsons where they remade Ned Flanders' house and the back room just gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you can't see it anymore. It's horrible. It's like they forgot to design the back of the car. Alright, now number 8 is one of my favorite ugly cars, and it's a more recent one. This is the Subaru B9 Tribeca. Also, probably likely to make the list of worst car names ever. B9, where does that come from? Is it like a scrap Saab project? Ooh, fighter jet or something like that? The nose is so big, it looks like Rudolph the Reindeer meets Severus Snape or something. Now the thing is with this car, the rest of it pretty much looks okay. I mean, the front is terrible. The front is fucking ugly. That nose is just insane. It makes you realize why Donner and Blitzen made fun of Rudolph so much. But the rest of the car is pretty okay, and that's why it's not that high on the list. At first glance, number 7 looks like it should be number 1 on this list. It's the Fiat Multipla, which is, if you're in America, another car you probably haven't heard of before. But as soon as you see the front of this, man, you're going to remember it. It looks like a hammerhead shark swallowed a submarine. Do you see how tiny and wide those eyes are? Now, again, like with the B9 Tribeca, the rest of the car looks pretty okay. It's not really that bad. The front is horrendous. Yes, it's fucking insane. I don't know how they put this into production, but the rest of the car sort of saves it from being truly wretched. Now, the make of number 6 may surprise you, but as soon as you see it, you'll know why it's on this list. It's the Aston Martin Lagonda wagon. That's right, an Aston Martin wagon. Now, I like wagons. I'd love a wagon. I'd love to have the M5 wagon back in America. That would be fantastic. But a wagon like this, and an Aston Martin wagon at that, is just wrong. And you can see why when you look at this thing. This thing is squarer than SpongeBob's pants and even uglier. It's got this really long, flat nose, terrible wheels that look more like dinner plates than anything else. It's way too long, the whole thing, and the back looks like it's falling off. In fact, the back of this car looks so botched on that it actually looks like a hearse. Now that actually might be cool. An Aston Martin hearse. Get your dead bodies to the cemetery faster than anybody else. Okay, now number 5 is actually a tie. But it kind of makes sense because they're two cars from the same maker, and they're both very similar. They are the Nissan Juke and the Nissan Murano CrossCabriolet. First of all, Nissan Murano CrossCabriolet. Now, that's a crossover SUV that they made into a coupe cabriolet. A coupe convertible crossover. Now let's get this straight. That's a car that's trying to be an SUV that's trying to be a convertible sports car. Yeah, you know that's going to look great. And it does. It's horribly ugly. Now, the Murano itself is not a good looking car. But you squinch it down, give it a convertible top and only 2 doors, and it looks like the fattest sports car ever. It's like the fat kid on your football team. And top up or top down, it just looks like a fat, ugly convertible, which is not what a convertible is supposed to be. Now, perhaps slightly even uglier than that is its ugly sister, the Nissan Juke. Now, this was a car designed by committee if there ever was one. It has as many bulges and lights as it's possible to have. It looks like it was designed by a 12-year-old who just plays video games all day long. It's got arches in the front, arches in the back. It gets smaller near the top. It's got weird flares everywhere. It's got 8 different shaped lights. And worst of all, when it gets dark and you turn on the lights, it looks like a retarded spider. Ah, retarded spider, don't kill me. But don't worry, it's not a retarded spider. It's just a really ugly car. Now, number 4 really doesn't have a lot of horribly ugly things about it. But there is just one super ugly thing about it that makes it terrible. It's the Suzuki X90, and like I said, there's no really terrible defining feature about it, except for its overall shape. Now, I'm sure any of you who have seen this car before know what I'm talking about and are thinking about what it looks like in your head right now. So I'm just going to skip all the awkwardness and say it right now. It's a chode on wheels! It is the chode of cars. Now, if you don't know what a chode is, well, I'm sure you can look it up, but I didn't tell you to. But when you do know what it is, you'll know why this car is so ugly. Anything that looks like that is just embarrassing to be seen in. Such an ugly car. It's like it's trying to be an off-roader, but it's not. It's just so small and tall and ugh. Oh, I'm just sorry I can't get the chodes out of my head. It's the Lincoln MKT, and it's another one of my personal favorite ugly cars. Now, the front of this car has that ridiculous theme that Lincoln seems to think looks good, but really doesn't. And they really need to be hit over the head several times with at least 4 wine bottles to let them know that this is not working. It's the grill. The grills on Lincolns right now are so wrong, and everybody knows what they look like. Baleen from a whale. Who thinks that's a good idea? Getting ideas for cars from animals sometimes works, but really most of the time it doesn't. That's as ugly as having, oh, I don't know, a baboon's butt on the back of a car, or maybe a top of a car inspired by a shark's fin, or maybe the windows of a car inspired by the bulges of a caterpillar. Yeah, this car is just like that, but it actually exists. It has whale baleen in the front, and on the back it has a huge sloping ass the size of an ocean, and what's coming out of that ocean? Oh, a whale's tail! So really, these guys thought it was a good idea to have whale baleen in the front and a whale tail in the back. And a car so big and fat, it looks like, you guessed it, a whale! The front is much smaller than the back, so it gets bigger and lumpier and saggier. Sort of like people who shop at Walmart. And then, of course, there's the whale features. So it looks like a big fat whale on wheels. Great job, Lincoln. Coming in at number 2 is the Isuzu Vehicross. Again, it seems like any car that's really ugly seems to have a really stupid name attached to it, and this car's no exception. Everything is wrong with this car, and that's why it's number 2 on the list. The front looks like an angry, ugly, mutant, zombie, dog, beetle thingy with stupid little big overbite teeth and angry little beady eyes and bulges everywhere across the car. It's just horrible. Now, the face of this car is just disgusting. It looks like it's been punched about 1,000,000 times. And you'd want to punch this car 1,000,000 times because it's so ugly. But there's 2 things even worse than that. First of all, the back looks like it has cancer. Now, why does it look like this? Well, this is because the car is trying to be an off-road, rough and tumble car. So, naturally, it's going to try to have the spare wheel on the back door, like a Jeep Wrangler. The difference is this car has its wheel embedded in the back of the door. Now, even worse than that is what's going around its entire body. A shitload of plastic. Now, I don't know who thought this was a good idea. I think they're trying to make it look, again, rough and tumble by having some tough plastic on the outside with these big, ugly bolts. But really, it just looks like somebody tried to bolt a bunch of plastic to their car. It looks like it has a big plastic diaper on the bottom that was bolted together at the last second by a 2-year-old. And speaking of 2-year-olds, do you remember those little ride-along trucks that you had when you were a kid that went like 2 miles an hour? If you were a girl, you have a pink Corvette. Or if you're a guy, you have one of those big Jeeps that has big wheels and the truck's kind of small. You know what I'm talking about, right? This looks like the grown-up version of that. It looks like I'm supposed to get in the top of this car. Now we're at number 1. And many of you might already know the car that's number 1 on this list because you haven't seen it yet and you know it has to be there because it's pretty recent and it's just gross. It's disgusting. I cannot believe that this car exists. Every single thing that can possibly be wrong with a car is wrong with this car. It's so gross, in fact, and so ugly that my brother and I actually came up with an alternate name for this car, and we call it that exclusively. But I'll say its real name just once for you guys, so you know what it is. That's right, it's the Pontiac Aztec. This car is known to me and my brother as the Pontiac Fuck. That's right, it's that ugly. You can't even describe this car when you drive by it. Every single thing is wrong with it. It's got these ugly, stupid, tiny little Hot Wheels-like wheels. It has a giant diaper of plastic going around the entire body of the car. It has a stupidly spelled name. It has a completely flat back with a weird glass canopy going up the back. Looks like somebody threw up the windows onto the back of this car. And of course, no ugly car is complete without a really fucking ugly face, and this car has one of the ugliest. It makes the car look like a douchebag. It has this weird ugly smile with ugly nostrils on the top of the hood. It's just a clusterfuck of a car stacked on top of a car stacked on top of another car. It's so ugly that when I first started driving by this car, I didn't even know what to say. I just would drive by it and go, fuck, that car is ugly. Or, fuck, who would even drive that thing? Or, fuck, who would even design that? And much less pass it through? Who put this car into production? How many people at GM, one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world, looked at this car and said, yep, that's okay. I love it. Let's put it into production. Now, we know Pontiac got all the reject cars, but this is like they were purposely trying to make them fail. This car is that last piece of shit that killed Pontiac, pretty much. Oh, well, along with a couple other really stupid cars. So there you have it. The ugliest car in the world. The Pontiac Fuck. Now, I know many of you might not have agreed with this list completely, and that's okay. It's just opinion. But you have to agree, all these cars are pretty ugly. So I hope you had some fun. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't, like, comment, and subscribe anyways. I don't really care. And don't forget to tune in next time to On the Clutch, where we talk about car stuff.